the first thing I want to show you this week is how to do iteration better. So on the left, you see a file called enumerate.py, and you will see why in a second. And it has basically a list called turtles with the different names for the Ninja Turtles. And then it can do iteration over this list in different ways. And on the right, I have my folder where I have that file, and I'll just run it. So if I run this file, I see all different ways that the turtles can say Kawabunga. So the first method uses simple indices. And this is what I've seen by far the most often in your homework. And it's normal. It's the only way you know so far of really performing an iteration. So I'll do a for a certain index in a certain range. And the range will be the length of whatever I'm iterating over. And then I'll print the ith element in that list. It says Kawabunga. And this is the result. So this works, but it's a bit cumbersome. You have to take turtles, and then you have to compute the length, and then you have to create an index to then access again and again a certain component of turtles. So it's a bit wasteful as well, because each time you have to access that component and so on and so on. And it's not very clean code either. I mean, you're composing different functions here. So much simpler is the second method, where we loop over list elements directly. So here, I'll take turtles, and I'll just loop over the elements of turtles. And this is done by taking a new variable name, turtle, and just doing a for turtle in turtles. And this will create new bindings every time. We'll bind the variable name turtle to each of the different Ninja Turtles, and so I can reuse this inside. And you see that this produces exactly the same result for what I would argue is much more readable code, because we're using now the variable name turtle to refer directly to the Ninja Turtle. Here we have to use I, which is an index. We could call this I turtle instead, but then we would have to understand that this is an index and not the actual value for the turtle, and so on and so on. So my point is, this is much simpler code than the original one. Okay, but one thing we could do with indices was use them within the loop. And this is true. I mean, if you do a for I in range len turtles, then you can start using this index. And you see it here on the right. You see that those Ninja Turtles are using their own index when they say Kawabunga. Okay, so how do you do this with the method I just described? It seems like you can only iterate over the elements, but you don't have the indices anymore. And for this, you use enumerate. So we'll talk about this in a little while, but enumerate turtles just gives basically a list of tuples where the first component is the index and the second component is the value stored in the list. So here it would be turtle. It would go over the different names, while I at the same time will go over the indices. So if I print turtle and then the index, I get exactly what I had before. And again, I think this code is much more readable than what was over here. I mean, you have to imagine that this turtles I could be used many times within the body of the function otherwise. And here I just use it once. Okay, now one last thing, and the advantage also with using enumerate is that it's very clean to change the index. So if I wanted to index from 1 instead of indexing from 0, I could just pass this as a new argument here, and I would have here turtle 1 instead of turtle 0. So that was for enumerate. That should really help you index over lists better, and you can also not use enumerate and just directly index as well. That was also the point here.